Dog barked at a strange lump on an old tree. When police cut it open, everyone froze. The forest was unusually quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that feels heavy rather than peaceful. Sunlight filtered through the dense canopy, laying golden patches across the forest floor as if nature were trying to illuminate something hidden. But it wasn't the sunlight that made the hikers stop. It was the violent barking of a dog, a medium-sized, amber-eyed mutt named Ruzo, who stood frozen in front of an old, twisted oak tree. His hackles were raised, his body trembling, and yet he never took a step back. Instead, he lunged forward repeatedly, barking with such desperation that even the birds fled from the branches above. Behind him, his owner, Caleb Thorne, struggled to hold the leash, confused and increasingly worried. From a distance, the tree looked ordinary. But as one stepped closer, they noticed it, the strange, bulging lump embedded deep into its bark, like the tree had swallowed something it shouldn't have. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of noticing things others ignore, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness Stories. Your support helps us continue bringing emotional and inspiring stories to life. Caleb had never seen Ruzo behave this way. The dog was gentle, never barked unnecessarily, and had been a quiet companion for the past 2 years since Caleb rescued him from an abandoned construction site. Ruzo had a calmness that made people instinctively trust him, but today, that calmness was replaced with panic, pure, urgent panic. Caleb knelt down, trying to soothe him, but Ruzo pushed his head against Caleb's chest only for a moment before turning sharply and barking at the tree again. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Caleb's heart pounded as he stepped closer to the misshapen lump. The bark wasn't growing around it naturally. It looked as if something had been jammed inside the hollow of the tree. Something the tree had tried to swallow over time. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called the police. There was something disturbing, something unnatural about the lump, and Ruzo's relentless barking made it impossible to ignore. Within minutes, the forest was filled with the sounds of footsteps and radio chatter as officers from the local department arrived, led by Officer Mara Hensley, a sharp-eyed woman known for her discipline and calm under pressure. But even she felt uneasy as she examined the massive oak and the strange swelling beneath its bark. Ruzo would not stop. He barked and cried and paced in frantic circles, pulling toward the tree as if he absolutely needed to be closer. Caleb held him tight, whispering reassurance, though his own breath trembled with fear of the unknown. Officer Mara slowly ran her hand across the surface of the swollen bark. It felt wrong, like something heavy was trapped inside. She motioned for her team to bring cutting equipment. The forest remained eerily quiet, sunlight flickering through leaves, while the officers circled around the tree, preparing to cut it open. Ruzo lowered himself onto the forest floor, chest heaving, whining as if begging them to hurry. When the cutting began, wood dust filled the air like mist, mixing with the harsh smell of aging bark. Each slice revealed more of the thickened lump, but it wasn't until the final layer cracked open that the forest seemed to exhale a single cold breath. The officers halted. For a moment, no one moved. Everyone simply stared. Inside the hollow of the tree was a small, decaying wooden box, tightly wedged between the inner layers. But what froze everyone wasn't the box itself. It was the faint sound that came from inside. A muffled, pitiful, trembling sound. The unmistakable cry of something alive. Officer Mara's heartbeat stuttered. Caleb felt his stomach drop. Ruzo leapt forward with a yelp so desperate it almost sounded human. The officers worked faster, peeling the rest of the bark away until they could pull the box out. It was small, nailed shut, the kind used long ago to store trinkets or heirlooms. But instead of age-worn emptiness inside, something was softly thumping, scraping, trying to breathe. Mara grabbed a crowbar with trembling hands and pried the box open. The lid snapped back. The forest gasped with her. Inside was a tiny puppy, barely alive, covered in dirt and dried leaves. Body cold. Eyes half open but unfocused. Only a few weeks old. Someone had sealed the helpless creature inside the box and stuffed it into the hollow of the tree, left to die slowly and silently in the middle of the woods. The officers stepped back in shock, unable to process the cruelty before them. Caleb froze in disbelief. Ruzo let out a long, broken howl that echoed through the forest like a call of mourning. It wasn't a normal reaction. It was too deep, too pained, too emotional. As though he understood the suffering the puppy had endured. As though he recognized it. Officer Mara immediately wrapped the frail puppy in her jacket. It barely moved, its breaths shallow and shaking. There was no time to waste. They raced toward the ambulances parked at the forest's edge. Caleb followed, carrying Ruzo, whose body trembled uncontrollably, not from fear, but from something older, something lodged deep within him. The small veterinary clinic attached to the police building became a place of desperate hope over the next hours. The puppy, later named Kiri, was placed under warm blankets, given oxygen, and treated for dehydration, malnutrition, and severe shock. The vet, Dr. Rowan Ellis, did everything he could, his expression tight with worry. Caleb and Officer Mara stood nearby in anxious silence while Ruzo sat glued to the glass door of the treatment room, whining softly every time Kiri let out a whimper. It was during those long hours that the pieces of the story began to come together. Officer Mara pulled up old reports. Just months prior, Ruzo had been found abandoned in a similar manner, locked in a crate at a construction site on the edge of a forest, starving, dehydrated, and terrified of the dark. Someone had tried to dispose of him too. The methods were terrifyingly similar. The hollow wind through the trees seemed to whisper a chilling truth. What happened to Kiri wasn't random.